Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of the day is you're listening to this. Welcome to another great episode of Uncanny Media, the show. It's me, your good buddy Spider, here with all kinds of great entertainment, all kinds of fun stuff. Some of it's depressing, some of it's awesome, some of it's, nobody cares. But we're here to talk about it anyway. So thank you for tuning in and joining me, and thank you to all of the new listeners. We keep getting these just vast influxes of new listeners just rolling in out of nowhere. It's the amount of more plays, the amount of increased plays and downloads we've had over the last few weeks has just been immense and astounding, and I'm humbled. I am humbled, and I am appreciative. And I know that there are people who've stuck with mostly the most recent episodes, but also people who've gone back to listen to some of the earlier stuff, some of the earliest episodes that I've done, and I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I hope you enjoy listening to what I have to say, such as it is. He said in a self-deprecating way. And I hope you continue to tune in as more episodes come, because we're going to keep on doing this. We're not going to stop anytime soon. We're going to roll on through as far as we can go. Let's do our usual weekly thing. Let's do our weather report, of course. It's still been kind of topsy-turvy. It's May, of course, and it's still in the first couple of weeks of May. And we've had some warmer days and we've had some cold days. We had a couple days where we had freeze warnings all of a sudden, and then it's been rain and rain and rain, and then one nice day and then rain, and it's just, it's been a whole thing. We're getting close. We're getting close towards the end of spring and getting into a proper summer, which hopefully, if we get to a proper summer, we're going to get some proper warm weather. I don't want it to bake. I don't want it to be 90 plus degrees here in Ohio. I mean, we're not that far south at all. We're not really in the South. I mean, we have a lot of people that live in Ohio that think they are the South, and they're not. Especially this part. Like, when I was in Northeast Ohio, it was ridiculous just how many people thought within 20 miles of the border of Pennsylvania that, oh yeah, we're Southern. Yeah, we're Southern boys and Southern girls. No, you're not. You live in Ohio. You've never been to the South proper. Virginia and all that other kind of stuff. The proper South. You've never been there. So... But I don't want it to get as hot as like Arizona and things like that. I don't need 100-degree weather on a regular basis. Just high 60s, mid 70s, maybe a couple 80-degree days. That would be my perfect temperature year-round, to be fair, if I could have it. I don't think I can get that, but anywhere in the world. But that's what I would ask for if I had my perfect weather pass. But other than that, it's been pretty stable. We've had some storms and things, but I think the majority of the nasty storms are over. We might get a couple more things before the season officially flips over, but I think for the most part, we're doing pretty well. The wife has started working on her yard work today. Started trimming down some of the weeds and some of the high grass in preparation for tending to her various plants that come back every year. She's got some flowers outside. Right now the irises are blooming. She's got some rose bushes in the backyard. I don't know how many have survived. The last couple of Ohio winters have not been kind to the roses in our backyard. But she keeps on going. More power to her. She's got some more plants inside. We're always looking for places to put the plants where they will survive inside the house, because the lighting is not perfect throughout the entire house, and you can't just mount grow lights everywhere, but we're doing our best. So she's getting into that green thumb time frame, such as she has it. She gets 2 days off a week, and those days, a lot of times, she doesn't want to do a whole lot because she does hard work. I mean, the work that she does is hard work. It's a lot of physical labor. It's not just sitting at a desk. It's not pushing pencils, you know. So a lot of times on her days off, she just wants to kind of relax and not do a whole lot. And I get that. I 100% get that, and I endorse that kind of thing. If you work a heavy labor job and you're doing back-breaking effort every day, except for a couple days when you get the chance to relax, just relax. Don't do nothing. Don't worry about it. Just let somebody else carry the load. Let somebody else be your Samwise Gamgee and carry the load for a short time. There's a lot of references already that I've dropped into this episode. It's only like the first 7 minutes. But what's going on in the world? What is happening? I'm going to talk a lot about Ohio probably tonight. In general and in my local area, because there's all kinds of things happening local here. I've had a few mentions of people I like to call the local wildlife on this podcast, and that's people in my local town who are not satisfied with the actions of our local government or our local authority figures for whatever reason. Some of it is legitimate. I'm not gonna tell them that they're completely out of line. But the way they behave to get their point across is out of line. Most of the time. And it's counterproductive, and it's not really working right. The big thing, and this is a thing that's a national thing that's come up, and I don't want to get too deep into it because I haven't formed a big opinion of it. I have some points to make for both sides of the argument, okay? And we're going to cover both of those. But I'm not standing firm on the issue right now. I probably will in the future once more facts emerge and I decide on things. But I'm not going to use this as a soapbox to tell you how you should feel about this issue. And the big thing right now, it does tie into the local area. I'll get back to that. But we're going to go national for a minute and then get back down to the local wildlife. The big issue is data centers. Data centers are contentious right now because data is a big deal. Data is information, data is a commodity, data is money, data is so many things going on. Digital is the way of the world right now. The digital world is the world. It's not like the Matrix where we're all plugged in and it's all like pure data and that's what it is. But I'm saying that there's so many things that rely on the internet and the way the internet functions and how data is passed between parts of the internet. All of that is vitally important to our economy, both in the country and in the world, now that so many countries are plugged into this kind of thing. It's the World Wide Web, right? It's not just here in the United States. And data security, all this stuff it was already getting to be a large issue because we always need more. Computers need more capacity, they need more memory, they need more computing power to handle the increased load as more and more of the world's population plugs in. Okay? Now, I kind of feel like it's overkill. I think we're doing too much. I think there's too much going on. We haven't solved some of our more analog problems, such as the prices and various things, which we'll get to. And just feeding people and keeping the homeless off the streets and that kind of stuff, right? These are analog problems. They're real world problems as opposed to digital data problems. But in order to keep all of this data moving, we need vast amounts of servers to handle the internet bandwidth, to handle the load. And this has come about to the idea of data centers, which are basically gigantic complexes, like multiple warehouses linked together, just filled with computing technology connected to the internet. It's just data storage, like servers, and imagine back in the day. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember, and even if you're not, you might remember old movies. There's plenty of old movies you can watch on cable, on streaming, wherever. When someone accesses a computer in a movie that's old enough, the computer is massive. It takes up an entire wall, right? All the early computers were like that. Now, nowadays, you've got a computer in your pocket. You've got your cell phone. Smartphones are basically miniature computers. They're not as good as a fully decked-out PC. Very few things are as good as that. Not even a console, even though I'm a big fan of gaming consoles. But they can still... It's a small computer. Computers can be that small. But we've gone full circle in that in order to store all of the chips and the motherboards and the hard drives and all of the various the networking components, you have to have large spaces, huge spaces, wall-to-wall server towers and platforms and things in big warehouses. And that's where the data centers come in. Data centers are large collections of warehouses holding all of this stuff that basically all it's doing is facilitating the transfer of information, across parts of the internet, because we need that much of it. Now, the biggest increase in this is also coming from a lot of people are now using AI. They're using ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and Claude. Claude is a new one that I just heard of. And I keep getting recommendations for it left and right, and I'm just like, no, I'm not using it. But Microsoft Copilot and Alexa and Bixby and Rufus on Amazon, all of these different AI things require vast amounts of computational power to do what they do quickly, even if they're wrong. Because, let's face it, half the time, a lot of these things, you put something into ChatGPT, it gives you an answer. You can steer it towards another answer that you prefer, which might not be the correct answer. Or maybe the first answer wasn't correct, and you have to correct it, because AI is not perfect right now, and it's kind of dumb, to be perfectly fair. But in order to do all this computing power that AI needs, you need to add more servers, add more equipment, add more warehouses. It's just a cycle of more and bigger footprints. And they don't want to put these things in the middle of a major city. For one, because major cities already draw a lot of power from power grids, and they don't want to risk overloading that power grid. But also because they put out a lot of heat. They put out a lot of energy out into the environment. And they don't want to overheat the city and oversaturate. So they want to put them in rural areas. Which, while on the plus side, you can be like, okay, well, that gets it away from people so people don't see it. But the people live in rural areas. They still do. There are very few truly empty places in the United States. There's a few. In Nevada, in Arizona, Colorado, in the Dakotas, in parts of Alaska, and in the Pacific Northwest, there's just areas where it's just forest and people don't really live there. They might go camping, but they don't live there. But there's still generally people across the entire U.S. There's people everywhere, and there's more coming every day. I mean, more people are being born all the time. So, but they want to put these data centers, and the problem that they're having is if they put these data centers in an area that's rural, but not out there enough that people don't live there, like out here in Ohio, they want to put it in parts of the county where I live that are more farmland, right? But it's going to add to the electricity weight. The electricity draw is going to be higher for people out there that might have already had fragile electricity because they're far from the centers of electrical power. And because these things run so hot, they require huge amounts of water. They're water-cooled. They are water-cooled, which is, it's now an old computing technology. Water-cooled computers are now old, like, they're not new technology anymore. It's not fresh stuff. We've got nitrogen cooling and various other things. But water cooling is a common deal. And so that's adding to the burden of a lot of rural places that rely on water sources, because now you're reducing the water that other people have access to in order to keep these data centers cool. And we have had droughts occasionally throughout the years here in Ohio. It's not common, but we do have them. We have a lot of lakes and rivers and things like that, but you plop a couple data centers around that require drawing on a lot of that, and it puts a strain on the water resources. Now, the other thing is, because it's drawing on these things, the utilities companies, like the electric companies and the water companies, because here in Ohio we have water companies that you're basically leasing the rights to draw water, which is frankly ridiculous, but somebody's got to pay for the infrastructure, I guess, for sewage and all that other kind of stuff, right? So, but these data centers are causing a strain on these, which means now they're having to repair their services more often because things are breaking down more often because they're getting worn out faster. So they are now charging more money. But not just for the data centers, they're upping the cost of the services to everyone. My water bill has gone up. My electricity bill has gone up. And some of these are just naturally right now because of the way the economy is. The economy is straight messed up because we had tariffs and then we didn't have tariffs and then we had tariffs and then we didn't, and now the tariffs are completely legal and there's refunds, but there's not refunds. We don't know how it's going, and then you got Iran with the energy thing, even though we don't source most of our oil from there anymore anyway. Most of our oil comes from here, so there's no reason that we should be paying more. But all those things are going up, and the data centers are taking a chunk out of it. So now we're having to pay the excess cost of the data centers, despite the fact that what we should be paying is only what we should be using. If I use a certain amount of water, I should only be paying for that certain amount of water. If I'm paying a certain amount of electricity, I should only be paying the electricity. But the thing of it is that the rates of that electricity have gone up because of all this, because they can get away with it, because they see a new potential business client. Oh, these data centers are coming in? Guess we're going to have to raise some prices. It's going to cause strain on our infrastructure, so somebody's going to have to pay for it. And they're passing that along to everybody. So there is a concerted effort nationwide to start circling down back to the drain of my point, there's a concerted effort nationwide to try to prevent many of these data centers from being built. If a community gets noticed that, hey, there's a company trying to buy up land to build a data center, then a lot of times, they have been getting signatures, getting petitions, and going to the local town council and saying, hey, we don't want this here. The issue I'm seeing is that the deals to get the data centers have been on a state level with a state and federal level. The deals have not been negotiated with the locals. The only area of local interest that gets included is the purchasing of the land. So for the infrastructure. It doesn't get approval by a local city council. It doesn't get approval by local citizenry. It's not up to them because the state has already said, well, we've approved this many data centers and these are the areas where we think they should go. And we'll reimburse a certain amount of money to local governments for their trouble, which is not much. And there's not much you can do about that. You can't get at your city council and say, we don't want a data center if the city council is not involved in the decision, which is unfortunate. But a lot of city councils have tried to blow smoke and be like, oh yeah, we're trying to decide whether we're going to allow it in our county or not. When they really don't have much of a choice. You know what I mean? But they're doing it to try to save face for the people. Okay. So let's get back to the local wildlife here. Which this is a legitimate gripe, I get it. But our city council here in my town, it's considering the issue of a data center somewhere in one of the nearby parts of the county. Alright? And of course, locally, a lot of people don't want it because we know the negatives and things like that. So, the various local wildlife, who are the people who go to the council meetings basically to stir up trouble and to talk about their own grievances and to get worked up about things, they've gone and used this as an issue that they can jump on. And they've said, hey, yeah, we're not in favor of this. Let's get a whole bunch of people. And they've tried to get people to join their way of thinking on this. And they were, of course, disappointed at the most recent council meeting. Because we have council meetings here in town, I guess every Monday. Every Monday they have a public meeting. And there's usually a section of the meeting's agenda where they allow the public to address grievances. They go like, hey, there's this, and people make little speeches and whatnot, and some people abuse it, which is why the local wildlife are what they are. They will abuse it by using it to call people names and to shout and argue because their brother got picked up on a speeding ticket a month ago and lost his license because he had too many points, or they lost their kids because they were smoking too much dope and they forgot that their kids were around and their kids wandered into traffic. So CPS took their kids, and they blame the city for all this stuff, right? They blame the city for problems that they've created for themselves. Not everybody who goes to talk at the city to complain is one of the local wildlife. There are people with legitimate complaints, and that's fair, but there are people who basically caused a problem for themselves, and when the city took action, now they blame the city. And they're organizing people, and they're getting mad about it, and they're abusing their power, and all these other, even though they're the ones that caused the issue. Which is why they are separate from the local concerned citizen. Instead of a concerned citizen, they are local wildlife, because all they do is bark and howl at the moon. But of course they went and they raised the issue about the data centers, and the council gave a non-committal answer because I don't think they can do anything. I think that's a state thing, unfortunately, which irritates me. I mean, it bothers me, so I can imagine the people are upset about it. But instead of, thinking we'll call the governor, we're going to raise a fuss with the state, they instead caused an issue at the meeting and then went on Facebook immediately afterwards and started making threats, saying, oh, well, if our First Amendment rights aren't going to get us anywhere, we're going to exercise our Second Amendment rights, which means they're going to start pulling their guns out, and they're going to go stand outside City Hall with a bunch of guns on display to make a statement. And I want to make it clear. I think all of the amendments are important. I think the Second Amendment is important for what it was intended for. It was intended to be a bulwark against federal aggression. If we ever had a government like 1930s Germany that oppressed the citizens and various things of that nature, then you would need the Second Amendment because people would need their guns and they'd need to fight back. Okay? That's what that's there for. I understand people are upset about gun control stuff, and I'm not going to take a big stance on that. I don't want people to get all upset about it. I'm not trying to preach one way or the other. I think people should have common sense about their firearms. Okay? If you're going to have them, then I think you need to make sure that you keep them out of reach of your kids until your kids are old enough to understand how things are used and when they actually should be used. If somebody's breaking into your home intending to hurt you or to hurt your property, that's fair use. That's when you draw the gun. Okay? You defend your home, you defend your family, you defend yourself. 100%. If the government turns into a tyrannical state of just they're going door to door and trying to execute people for no particular reason, that's when you defend yourself. By all means, you do that. But you don't just go out, wave your guns around because you're mad at the local city council for doing things that you don't like. You don't go out and wave your weapons and be like, look at us. This is us. We're not taking your BS anymore. Because that's a threat. Even if you don't... Because, of course, on the video, the guy who I watched who talked about this, okay, there's a couple of people specifically who spread this kind of nonsense. And the one guy who is kind of a focal point, who goes to these meetings and shouts and yells and then goes and complains on Facebook about how they treated him badly for shouting and yelling, right? He specifically says, hey, we're going to go with our Second Amendment rights and we're going to do this. But it's not a threat, it's a promise. Well, no, that's not how it works. It's a threat. It's not, you can't just say that and magically, oh, well, legally it's not really a threat because he said it wasn't. No, you called for a bunch of people to show up with guns outside City Hall and display them in a threatening fashion. You can't do that. Come on. And even in a place where it's open carry is not there for you to be swagger and to walk around and be like, I got my gun on my hip. Look at this. I'm a tough guy. You won't mess with me. It's to make sure that you are visible in case a criminal is in the area looking to do something and they see, oh, well, that person has a weapon. Maybe I shouldn't do something. That's the intent. It doesn't always work that way. I mean, because people are stupid. But that's the intent. It's not for you to walk around and feel like a big man with your gat on your hip. Okay? If that's why you go around open carry, you're doing it wrong. You're the exact reason why gun laws exist. Because you're being abusive. Right? So yeah, the local wildlife has called for groups of, quote, God-fearing patriots to assemble outside of the state houses with their guns as a statement to say, we're not going to put up with this anymore. Which is a poor choice. It's a poor idea because no one here in my town is marching through the streets with tanks and jackboots doing certain kinds of salutes trying to repress the people of Hall of Fame City. It's not happening. It's not happening. But these people think it is. So, and they're going to find out. They're going to find out what happens when you say things like that. You know, they're going to find out. But that's what's happening in my local area. Another thing that's happening in the state, which irritates me. Oh, this burns me. When tax season came around this year, I have never in my life owed taxes. I've always, me, my family, we've always gotten a tax return. Because you pay the taxes all year, it comes out of your paycheck, etc., etc., and then because they overinflate how much you need to pay, and then we need to give some back at the end. That's the federal, that's whatever. Because of the way that the tax laws have changed, we owe the federal government about $160 for the first time. For the first time ever, which is crazy. But not only that, but they've raised the taxes in my town and in the state. So now we owe the town about $300 some in taxes. We got a refund from the state, but it was like $200 cheaper than it. I say cheaper, $200 less than usual over the history of time we've lived in this area. Okay. Now, what is this all leading up to? An article in the news on Cleveland.com, which deals with local news in Ohio, that said Ohio has collected a surplus of $1.2 billion more in tax than expected. And their question is, how should it be spent? My question is, why did they get that much money, and when are we getting it back? Because if you've overtaxed the citizens to the point where you have $1.2 billion extra dollars in the state budget from tax revenue, I think you should give that back. I think you should give some of that back, because I think that means that you overtaxed people. I think we paid a bit too much, good sir, and we're entitled to some of that back in our pockets. But it's not going to happen. It certainly isn't. They're going to put it towards some state project or something or other, and then next year they'll say, oh, we have a deficit, and things like that. California did the same thing. California, during the virus years, had so many restrictions and so many things going on that people had to pay all these fines and all kinds of stuff, businesses and individuals, and they ended up with a surplus that was built off of the back of the citizens. And what did they do with it? Well, they kept it for themselves. They did whatever they did, and then I don't know if they've had another surplus since then. You didn't hear much about it after that. They're like, hey, we got a bunch of extra money, and then it was quiet after that, because the state governments never want to really let out that they have more money than they're supposed to, because then maybe you will stop paying them as much, because obviously they have plenty. But news outlets will occasionally get a hold of the information, and they'll make a big news story about, like, oh, breaking news, look at all this money that we've got in the state. How do you guys want to use it? State officials, and the state officials are like, oh, well, we didn't really want you to know about it to begin with, but we'll figure it out. We'll use it for roundabouts, or we'll use it for this, and we'll use it for that. And like, my town here has a certain grant from the state, because the state gives out grants to the towns within the state for road improvements. We have a pretty large I don't remember the exact number. It was a large amount of money that is going towards road improvements, and we have a lot of roads that needs repaved. Like my street here is considered, for some stupid reason, it's considered to be an alley. Just because it's a small street and there's not a lot of people on it, it's considered an alleyway, but it's still a road. It has a name, okay? It's a named road, and it corners with another named road. They're real streets. It's not just some back area. It's not some cul-de-sac with one name for the entire little area back here. It's a set of streets. And they never pave it. They never repave it. It gets torn up in the winter badly because we have a lot of work vehicles that come through here. Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm not complaining about my neighbors. I am not trying to complain about my neighbors. This is just some facts I want to put out. I have Hispanic neighbors on at least 3 sides from where I live. They're behind me, they're to the left of me, they're to the right of me. They're just not in front of me. But also around the corner, going towards the front of me, there's more. Now, that's not to say anything negative about them. Okay, we're not getting into any racist territory, so let's not even think about that. It's just that a vast majority of the work that a lot of these people do is labor work. It's construction. It's work that requires vans and trucks and heavy duty vehicles. All right? And so we constantly have large Super Duties going through the neighborhood. We constantly have big work vans and things going through the neighborhood. And the heavier the vehicle, the more damage the roads are going to take, especially if they're not upkept. If they're not kept up regularly by the city, which ours aren't. Anytime we get a bunch of potholes, the city comes through, drops some tar in them, and moves on. They don't repair the roads in any meaningful sense. So do you think we're on the list to get any of this grant money for local infrastructure? I bet you're thinking what I'm thinking. The answer is no. My street is not on the list of streets. Nothing in my neighborhood is on the list. Which is not surprising, but it is also still disappointing, regardless. Because these roads, they take a toll on the vehicles. Like my car, it's an SUV, and it ended up having control arm problems and bearing issues, and the engine mount was cracked and a bunch of things, and part of it has to do with the rough roads. Another part of it was having to swerve because somebody pulled out in front of me and I had to jump a curve to get around them and not smash into their vehicle. So it did a number on my vehicle instead. But the roads don't help. They aggravate the issues. And part of the reason that my timing chain has slipped is because of these potholed roads. It's not like I go down them at 50 miles an hour. I go down like 10, 15 miles an hour at most. Sometimes less than that, depending. It's not like I'm reckless. But they won't, ours aren't on the list. Ours are not on the list. Of course. So $1.2 billion surplus tax income in Ohio. How's it going to be spent? Probably not on anything that we're going to actually know about. So, who knows what's going to happen there. I saw that today and I was a little irritated. Because we've still got scandals going on. We still have scandals going on as far as Ohio got roped into that daycare fraud scandal, the same that was in Minnesota. Apparently, we have a sizable population of Somalis, which I don't think there's any in my town. I've never seen any, to be honest. And not that I would recognize anybody as Somali just on the looks, but we don't have too many people that speak with an accent from that part of the world, honestly. And I'm not trying to be derogatory. I'm not saying anything badly about these people. Okay, I just know that the common thread in the various fraud things in Minnesota were, unfortunately, people from Somalia. And so because we have a population of them in Cleveland and Columbus, people are now, oh, it's the Somalis in Ohio. They're up to no good. Let's audit the daycares. Now, I'm not behind that big push because, again, I've got Hispanic neighbors, so I'm not against Hispanics. I've never seen any Somalis in the neighborhood, but I don't care. Whatever. You can be wherever you're from. You can be from Russia. You can be from China. You can be from wherever. As long as you're not undermining our state and our country in favor of where you came from, then I don't care what you do. You're living that live, right? You're here to survive. But because of that, there's been increased attention paid to various businesses and charities attached to some of these folks, and there's been some evidence that there's been some fraud. Which the state government of Ohio has said, well, we're immune to fraud because we have so many checks and balances, but there's been several news outlets that have said, well, what about these receipts? What about this? What about that? So there's a big scandal going on about that. The state government is denying anything improper has ever happened because of so many checks and balances, whereas news sources have said, well, we've investigated and it looks like there's some irregularities. How do you explain it? So I don't know how that's going to end. We've been in a lot of scandals here in Ohio for the last few years. And people who should have been busted in these scandals were not. And people who basically just took one for the team are getting a slap on the wrist for a few years. So it's kind of frustrating that there's a bunch of money in Ohio at the state level while the state is economically depressed, as it has been for many years. Many years. So that's your Ohio news report going on right now. There's a lot going on in Ohio. Mother's Day. Mother's Day was this past weekend. As of this recording, it was this past weekend. Did you do anything special for Mother's Day? You might not have because maybe your mother has passed on, which I sympathize with you. I still have my mother, so I can't really, on the same level understand, but I do offer my sympathy. And some people don't get along with their parents anymore, and that's perfectly fine too. If you don't want to celebrate a terrible mother, by all means, don't worry about it. But we celebrated Mother's Day because my wife is a mother. We have my daughter, of course. And we didn't do a whole lot, but I made sure that it was a nice couple of days. She got home from work on Saturday. I had a nice dinner and a bottle of wine for her. On Mother's Day itself, me and my daughter, we got her a card, and I got her a couple of T-shirts featuring some characters that she enjoyed, and we had a second nice dinner that I made. So I made dinner both nights in a row for her and for the family in general, so that she could relax and not have to worry about that kind of thing, and feel like she was appreciated. Because that's the point, right? It's for the moms to be appreciated. And we have a lot of mothers as part of Uncanny Media. We have affiliates. We're affiliated with Cooking Basically. The woman who runs Cooking Basically is a mother. She doesn't have her kids with her. There was, some things going on between her and the father of the children and that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to put her business out there for anybody. But I do want to say, even if you don't have your kids with you and it's not your fault and whatever happens, you're still a mother. And you still deserve to appreciate the day. Okay? So she's on a team. Chaositry are one of our latest affiliates. She deals with heirloom plants and things of that nature, if I have not yet mentioned it on the show. She's in South Carolina, and she is a mother of 3 children, trying to do everything on her own right now. And so more power to her, so definitely want to appreciate her. The ladies in the Musicians Hangout are both mothers, and again, they're personal friends of mine, and I appreciate everything that they do, so I want to make sure that we gave them their props for Mother's Day. And, anybody else, there's plenty of other people who, and again, if you're naturally a mother, or you're a stepmother, or, different or you've adopted, it doesn't matter. You're putting in the work, you're doing your best to raise these kids, or you at least did throughout your time, and maybe through no fault of your own, they don't live with you. It's I appreciate you. And we appreciate you here at Uncanny Media. And that was the whole point. So I made sure that my wife felt appreciated for Mother's Day. Also this past weekend was WWE Backlash, which is a little mini show that they do after WrestleMania. WrestleMania, remember, was a little divisive for me. The first night was kind of like, I'm not into it. The second night was better. But the event itself wasn't great compared to previous events. Backlash was okay. It had a couple of matches that didn't really make a whole lot of sense story-wise. They kind of didn't... There wasn't a point to some of them. And there were some surprising outcomes to others. So we'll see what happens. The next show they have is an international show. They have a show in Italy, which is mostly just for the European fans to get a chance to see high-quality wrestling entertainment. It's not going to advance a whole lot in the storylines. It's just a little stepping stone before bigger things. But, they deserve it. There's fans all across the world. They should get the chance to enjoy it just like we do here in the United States. So I'll probably watch it at some point. The other thing that has happened recently is that we did have the debut of the new season of This Uncanny Earth, which was my first. This Uncanny Earth was my first show following the split from the old network, which we don't want to give any attention to because they suck. I bet the lawyers are going to jump all over that. Anyway, This Uncanny Earth started out purely as just radio, just audio, and then it moved to a video podcast format. And we were doing it constantly without fail, and we were getting pretty burnt out on it. So we hit up on the idea to do seasons, and that has worked pretty well so far. This is the second or third time we've used the new seasonal system where we run 3 months of episodes, take a month off, then 3 months more of episodes, then take a month off, etc. throughout the year. So we just had our new season begin this past Saturday. We're on Saturdays now. This Uncanny Earth is on Saturdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, on YouTube. And it was my episode. We moderate the episodes. We it's a 3-person team still, and each week a different team member tackles a different episode, does the presentation, and the other two we talk about things and we discuss and throw our thoughts into it. And this time around, the cycle started with me. We always change it up every season, so it's not always the same person starting every cycle. And I talked about the sounds of space. Now, as we all know, if you're a space person, not an alien, but if you're a person interested in space, rather, that space is a vacuum. And if you were able to, you can't because you have to be able to breathe, and you can't breathe in space. But if you were able to just go out in space, take off a helmet, and just listen, you wouldn't hear anything. Because space is relatively silent, right? Because of the way it is. So they say. But certain agencies like NASA and various universities interested in space have used technology to capture radio emissions from planets and stars and comets and black holes and solar winds and all these great fantastic things, and translate them into audio, into tones, into sounds we can hear. And some of it kind of sounds a little fantastic and some of it doesn't, but I played several samples of this sonification on the latest episode of This Uncanny Earth, as of this broadcast. So if you want to hear me present those sounds and have us discuss the accuracy and how we feel about the sounds, it was a very different episode for us. Usually we take some very concrete facts and we dissect them when we talk about our opinions of things. But this time we took some creative liberties, and I feel good about it. Next week, which is actually this week, it's this Saturday, as of this broadcast, of course. This Saturday we're going to be talking about hyperdrive technology with Steven. Steven is the third member of the team, of course, behind Robert Solomon and myself. He's a full-fledged member of the team. He's no longer just the intern. I don't know how long I got to keep explaining that. It's not really a joke anymore, but it's kind of a joke, but it's not. So he's going to be talking to us about hyperdrive technology, which I know a bit from a sci-fi fantasy perspective, but we're going to see what he has to present as far as realism and reality goes. So that's coming up. And what else is going on? There's a lot of other stuff that we do. I don't know if I mentioned it enough. On the Uncanny Media, we've got 2 channels. We've got the This Uncanny Earth channel, which is that show specifically. And we have the Uncanny Media channel, which is run by me, which has all of my gaming videos, but it also has the Uncanny One-Shots. We're up to episode... I think by the time you hear this, I'll have done episode 72 with episode 73 on the way. And these are simple 1-minute interview questions. I have to respond in less than a minute about life, about my creative pursuits, about all kinds of things. We're 70 plus episodes in, and they just keep getting more interesting and more in depth. So definitely tune into that, along with the gaming videos and the food reviews that I'm still doing occasionally, the robot reviews I'm still doing occasionally, the drink reviews that was my knuckle cracking, pardon me, that I'm still doing occasionally. So there's a lot of content. We have a lot of content connected with Uncanny Media, and we keep adding to it, along with this podcast, along with everything else. It's just expanding in huge ways, now that we've come full circle to get to this. Because we started the show kind of talking about this, and now we're back to where we are. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're getting towards the end of this episode, so I want to say thank you. Because without the people tuning in every week, without the people watching the videos, without the people chatting on the Twitch streams, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have all these things to talk about, to complain about, to enthuse about, etc., etc. So thank you. I appreciate you. So we are at the end. We are at the end of the episode. It's episode 65. Senior discount. We're old enough to retire. But we're not going to. We're going to keep on working. Just like my grandfather. He hit retirement age and he kept on working till the day he fell over. Which is a very flippant way to say that, and I miss him very much, and I don't mean to dishonor his memory in any way. But he kept working until the day that he was done. And that's what we're going to do with Uncanny Media. The individual parts might take seasonal breaks, but the machine itself never stops. We take no vacations. We take no time off. We don't step back for anything. Where all the other competitors, they take their breaks and they take their time and they say, oh, well, we got to reevaluate and we got to use new software and we got to do this and we got to do that. We don't do that. We plow on forward with whatever we have, however we have it, and we will make our impact every single day. So with that in mind, thank you so much. I'm going to get out of here, have a bit of a snack, play some more games, go to bed. And I'll see you folks next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.